the best of the week on Relevant Radio.
Glenn is joined by longtime Relevant Radio contributor Angela Erickson. Glenn, take it away.
Happy to have along Angela Erickson with us today. She's a Catholic wife and mom, longtime pro-life worker, a blogger, a speaker, and motivator, not only of her family, but us, as she's joined us many times on the radio through the years and is heard regularly on our Twin Cities affiliate for Relevant Radio, 1330 WLOL, with Brian Gibson and Living the Gospel of Life Saturdays at 12:30 when you're in that neck of the woods. But Angela, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for allowing me to join you today.
Well, you always have a lot of good things to say about family life and about life issues, but I want to talk to you a little bit about how we try to persuade those who might see things differently, and we're trying our best to lead all souls to heaven, right? And a great way to do that is to share the truth. And in the wake of all things Charlie Kirk, since you've been mixing it up as someone who's very passionate about your faith, about the life issue, you've been talking about that from your college days through today in a variety of ways, but just wanted to talk about some ways to go about trying to persuade others to not be afraid to wade into sometimes difficult conversations, but to be able to do it probably with the grace to make it an effective conversation. That was one of the hallmarks of Charlie Kirk's work, is not being afraid to talk to those who disagreed with him and to share the truth, because he knew that was important, but to, not just be so standoffish that you couldn't have a conversation.
Yeah, I think overall, Charlie did just a wonderful job of what I would call relational apologetics. And for anyone who is afraid to dive into those conversations, I think now is the time to be bold. We have no other option but to be courageous right now. We have a culture that is floundering and young people who are just utterly lost. And we don't do anyone any favors with this notion of false compassion where we don't speak the truth when we ought to. And I think often the best opportunities arise within the people that we already know, which can be the hardest sometimes because we're afraid of damaging relationships and things like that. But I think most apologetics is done relationally. And what I mean by that is that it's usually most effective with those that we are personally in relationship with. Now, that's not exactly what Charlie Kirk did. He did something that what I would also call relational apologetics, and we could talk more about the differences there, but I'm talking to you, dear listener. You have more influence in your circle than you realize, and we have to start availing ourselves of true compassion, which is speaking the truth in love with those around us. And I think understanding our relationships and how much we can say and when to say that is really important.
A couple of ways looking at how we approach and who we approach, and then some kind of inroads with content a little bit too. But you mentioned, I think, Angela, very important is the influence we have on our circle of influence, the people closest to us. Now, on the one hand, it's really hard, right, to convince family of something. They've had their minds made up about things, and us and what we think about things maybe for a long time. But our friends, there's a point somewhere where everyone gets their ideas about things, changes their ideas about things, and where is that? It's often not watching a political debate. Everybody's fairly entrenched with that. But at some point, somewhere on issues that matter, someone's mind is changed. Someone's mind gets to be made up by what they heard. And for all the messages that are out there between social media, radio, TV, magazines, billboards, what have you, it's really that personal one-on-one sharing of a story that seems to make so much difference. So I think that's really important, Angela, like you said, that we kind of try to think of, we've got a little more strength with our circle of friends than we might realize.
Yeah, I think I've been very blessed to have certain family members in my life that we disagree politically tremendously on many, many issues. And at times it has put a strain, mostly because I think we were putting politics above relationship. And I think that's where we tend to go very wrong in our current culture. We're very polarized and we place politics before our relationship. And I think it's so important that we remember to see the person in front of us and not just what they believe. Because like you're saying, our beliefs can change over time, but the innate dignity that we have as persons made in the image and likeness of God, of people who are incarnate souls, that never changes. That does not change. And so when we prioritize the relationships that God has given to us, has placed in our lives, and we don't allow the enemy, the devil, to use politics to create a divide, it maintains an open door where, number one, we can be challenged in our beliefs, which is a good thing. It's an objectively good thing to be. Iron sharpens iron, right? And so I think it's really important that we allow ourselves in humility to be challenged, but also in doing so, you build a rapport with these people that you disagree with, because they begin to see that you are a trustworthy person and that you genuinely care about them as an individual. And so down the road, you're going to have those conversations, those really tough conversations, but instead of them rooted in being about who is right, they're going to be rooted in love for the other, which is, I think, a key difference in a lot of our dialogue today. Is people love to prioritize being right over winning souls. They want to win the argument, but not the soul. And I think that is the wrong way to approach any sort of dialogue, especially with people that we love. And it's a wrong way to transform the culture.
Talk a little bit more about that, about how it's really important to take that long view to win that person for eternity versus just, I beat you in an argument. My words seem to sting a little bit when I said them, and the audience might have applauded, and I might have seemed very slick when I was doing that, versus kind of nurturing that relationship along, keeping it open, keeping it at a point where we might be able to infuse a little truth that'll make the difference for the long run. Now, the reality is that we need to love that other, even and maybe especially if they disagree with us.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, the mode is always really important to keep in mind too. Like, people often, oh my goodness, for years, they would come to me in my messages asking me, oh, so somebody on my Facebook page said this one thing, what can I say in response? And so people would ask me to come in and do covert apologetics for them and equip them. And because that was a lot of my background, was teaching apologetics, and I love it. I really do. But often there are two people we're trying to reach generally when we're doing apologetics online, for example. You are either talking and trying to convert the person that you are speaking with directly, or you see that they're immovable. And so then it becomes more about trying to give people who are onlookers a better view of the full scope of the discussion. And so, like, when I would go to college campuses, when I worked for Students for Life, there were times when I was scared I was scared of the people that I was interacting with, because they, had some sort of, they were loud, or they seemed like they had the potential, the capacity to be violent. I'm thinking of one time in UW Platteville in particular. This guy scared me, but he's opened up this conversation, and it ended up being this huge crowd. And it was very interesting because, on one hand, he provided an opportunity. We're kind of in a fishbowl. Everybody's standing around us watching this dialogue happen because he's so bombastic. He's drawing a lot of attention, which it could be a good thing or it could be a bad thing, depending on the type of attention. But it was really interesting because all of a sudden in the middle of this conversation, I'm allowed to look like the really reasonable person because I'm being measured and charitable, and he looks crazy, and that was working in my favor. But it's not, because at that point, once I realized he was not going to change his mind, I'm trying to persuade the audience and not just him. And so I think one thing you have to be mindful of in a conversation is, who am I trying to convince right now? And that's going to change your approach on some level. So if you're not talking in relationship with somebody that you know really well or that you love, that's what happens online. And you can easily go into this mode of like, I'm just going to dunk on this person. I'm going to make them look stupid, and then I'm going to sign out. But I would caution people not to do that. Be mindful that you still have an audience. And so that's one part. Now, in the case where we're talking to people that we love and want to maintain a relationship with, I think that's where you open up opportunities to find primarily areas of agreement and focus on those areas of agreement. Now, when you lay a foundation where they can see like, oh, this person doesn't hate me, and we actually have some things in common. So you can see both that they have a capacity to be reasonable, and they also see that in you. And that lays a great foundation for them to trust you and feel safe sharing things, so that down the road you can engage in those conversations prudently and effectively when it gets to those harder issues that you don't agree on.
Do we need to watch out for the trap we have in our modern culture where conflict has been lifted up as entertainment, and we almost assume that two sides that disagree are supposed to fight and be angry, visibly angry at one another, and we might tune into our favorite news channel any given day to find out who we're supposed to be mad at today, is what it seems like, and we aren't necessarily designed to operate that way.
No, it's really hard on our human psyche, and I think that we're seeing that play out very clearly on a cultural level. We're not made to live in an echo chamber. We're meant to live in community and things like that, but we're not meant to be isolated. And I often call social media anti-social media because it does make us antisocial in some ways. We curate these perfect echo chambers. And so then we're not really exposed to anyone else or their ideas. And that has been part of what has made people so fragile intellectually. And so we stop asking questions when we're being spoon-fed from the media and propaganda, certain talking points, and they're telling us who we should be mad at for a couple hours today and who we're going to be mad at later because of the news cycle just changes so quickly. But then we stop asking questions, we stop being curious, and we stop engaging in good faith with other people because we're no longer ordered towards truth. We're not seeking truth anymore. We're seeking to be right. We're seeking to be correct. And so, yeah, I think we have to do everything that we can to avoid that. And I'm guilty, as guilty as the next person of this. So this isn't me. I hope nobody hears what I'm saying and thinks, well, I've seen Angela do this. Maybe you have. But I think it would be good for all of us to take a step back and do everything we can to resist that temptation to live in an echo chamber and to perpetuate the talking voices that are saying we have to constantly other the other.
Speaker and blogger Angela Erickson, who's waded into the fray many times through the years, talking with us today on how to disagree and persuade with those who might think and feel differently than we do about a variety of issues, looking at some of the legacy of Charlie Kirk, the way he handled himself in front of folks who differed just a little bit. Angela Erickson, always a joy to have us along here on Morning Air.
Like what you just heard? Share it with your family and friends. And thanks for listening.